Good day, I'm Administrator Adam Southgate, and today's lecture will be covering the Abrahamic sphere's Bos Drwg. Have you ever worked at a place where the one in charge of you appears to actively want to make your life measurably worse? Maybe they were incompetent and forced you to clean up their mess. Maybe they viewed you only as a resource to be used up and discarded, working you to exhaustion. Maybe they forced you to do tasks that were completely pointless and only wasted time, but they insisted had to be completed regardless. Now, this could have been simply a power-mad middle manager, mundane sociopath, or possibly could have been a Bos Drwg. This is what today's entity confronts us with, but before I get ahead of myself, I'd like to mention the Order's Discord to help keep our hunters organized. It's broken up into different roles based on rank and which earth you belong to, if any. Along with this, we conduct our contracts through this system, so I hope to see you all there. Now, on to our hunters' updates. Firstly, you may have noticed my change in title. This is due to my responsibilities having naturally morphed over time. While my original responsibilities as a junior researcher were to assist Dr. Jenkins in any task he saw fit while maintaining my own research, it is now more creating these instructional videos, managing our hunters and their contracts, as well as acting as overcom support during operations. This began due to Dr. Jenkins deciding his time was more worthwhile than my own, placing the responsibility of creating these instructional videos onto me. The Druidic Council, after some time, realized that the instructional videos would also be a good place to announce contracts for our hunters, and so I began including them. During the defense of Drwg, it quickly became apparent that I had a far more direct means of communication with our hunters, and so slowly, but bit by bit, my responsibilities changed. Even though I was barely in the labs, except for when I needed information on an entity for a video, I still had the title of Junior Researcher, until last week, when one of the HR department's people finally realized what had happened. Their first thought was to return me to the labs and my original job. However, after reading through my reports, they decided to make my new role official, granting me the title of Administrator, or Hunters Administrator to be more accurate. Secondly, the Iron Dawn infiltration contract. As a quick recap, we recently captured a member of the Iron Cult, who informed us of a recent split in their numbers. According to him, the cult has broken up into the Old Guard, the former leadership, and a few loyal soldiers which our captured member belongs to, and the Iron Dawn. This Iron Dawn is made up of the majority and has a far more radical viewpoint than the Old Guard. Their wish is to speed up the creation of the Iron God by any means necessary, which explains many of the recent events we have witnessed. To get to the bottom of this, we decided to send in a small team with the Old Guard member to infiltrate the Iron Dawn. The team went in as new initiates under the supervision of the Old Guard member, as this would explain their lack of metallic implants and overall knowledge, providing them with some wiggle room. After a tense welcome to the camp, the team broke off individually in an attempt to find any information that could prove useful in future operations. It was at this point the whole team went silent, with no communications until a week later when one of their number arrived outside the Kafili Order office. Much of his body had been replaced with rusted iron implants, and he was half insensible, but he managed to fill us in on what had occurred. According to him, shortly after their arrival, they were ushered to an initiation ceremony where they were implanted. One by one, they began to forget their mission and become fully fledged Iron Dawn members. He described the sensation of a not-quite being whispering in the back of his and their minds, slowly whittling away their resolve. The only thing that saved him was an MMP he always kept on him. When he finally found a moment, he made his escape, rushing back to us and delivering what he had learned, slowly passing shortly after. According to his report, the Iron Dawn are constructing what they call the avatar of the Iron God. The Iron Golem was apparently their first attempt at creating this being. However, lacking human intelligence, it was discarded. The mutilated man that was found wandering the Brecon Beacons was one of the many failed attempts to create the base of this avatar from a mortal human, and eventually this process led to success. The pump house burning metal was an offering site to this being, meant to take it from the realms of modified woman to near-divine creature. Their hope with this avatar is to inspire belief within the general public. This being will be capable of great supernatural feats that will push people into worship of the Iron God. We apparently still have time, thankfully, as while they have a working base, a woman who survived the many horrific modifications while still retaining her sanity, she has yet to be infused with enough belief to reach the tipping point of semi-divine figure. This opens up an opportunity, as an avatar is a singular being, meaning that each god or potential god entity in this case can only ever have one. This means that if we're able to eliminate this person before they fully ascend, the Iron God will never be able to have an avatar again. If we were to attempt this after the ascension, not only would it be infinitely more difficult, but the avatar would be able to reincarnate after a time, so doing it before removes this problem. We are still attempting to locate where this proto-avatar is located, but once we do, it will be an all-out assault requiring all available hunters to participate. The Abrahamic sphere has always been a difficult one to grasp. A living reflection of all Abrahamic faiths existing at the same time within a singular place despite the contradictions created from said scenario. A universe with thousands of the one God, a place where every incarnation of the only Son exists at the same time. An utterly incomprehensible realm that would bring theologians to fistfight. Within this complex web exists both many versions of the angelic and the demonic, and while the angelic is far outside human comprehension, the demonic is far more understandable. The beings that exist within this plane of the damned are greedy, wrathful, and power-hungry, and while such motives from our perspective are seen as distasteful, we can at least comprehend them, even if we mostly disagree with them. In fact, those of the demonic appear to exist within a similarly complex social structure to our own, though with far more extreme values. Things that we consider moral ills to them are virtues, and vice versa. They are hyper-individualistic even when compared to ourselves in the modern world, and only work together under the threat of violence imposed by the one in charge. From what we've seen, they organize themselves like a pyramid scheme where those at the bottom pay up to those at the top, however with the possibility of advancement through the murder of those above. This hyper-competitiveness results in, surprisingly, not the strongest being at the top, but the cleverest, with those just below being the strongest, and acting as a barrier to those looking to take the top spot. The entities we are covering today could be considered natural middle managers, clever enough to rise from the bottom, but not quite enough to break through to the very top. Before I discuss the Bos Drwg in detail, I'm going to begin with a hypothetical, albeit true commoner story. A man by the name of Stuart begins working at a local mid-level manufacturing company. He's given the typical induction and taught what will be expected of him, and then he is introduced to the man who will end his life, Jeremy, the floor supervisor. He's cordial, smiles regularly, and even tells Stuart some jokes that, while Stuart does not find funny, he appreciates the attempt. Stuart falls into his work, assembling joysticks for tractors, and all is going well, until Jeremy suddenly moves up an order that he stresses needs to be completed before the weekend. Now, Stuart, doing some quick mental math, knows that to finish the order on time would be impossible, and he expresses such to Jeremy. The jovial smile quickly vanishes from Jeremy's face, and without warning he bursts into a tirade of anger, throwing insults and threats at Stuart, each one hammering him down, freezing him in place. Stuart wants to bite back, but something in the back of his mind, a small voice tells him he needs this job, and so he sits and takes the abuse. Stuart works late every night for the rest of the week, and the order is completed just on time. Jeremy's smile quickly returns, and he acts as if his outburst of rage never happened. Stuart, shaken by the experience, is simply happy that things have returned to normal. However, as time passes, the outbursts become more and more common, and Stuart is saddled with even more work that he cannot handle. At some point, Jeremy gives Stuart a key to the factory so that he can work even later into the night or even on weekends. Anything to get the orders done on time. He frames it as if he's giving Stuart a gift rather than forcing him to do even more work, claiming it shows his trust in him. The change starts slowly. Stuart begins regularly working an extra hour each day, then coming in for an hour or two on the weekends. But these extra hours eventually build. At some point, Stuart, too exhausted and drained to work out when, he stayed late enough to be there when the next working day began. Then one night, while Stuart was working all alone in the silence of a building that should have been empty, it began. A twisting, screaming pain in his gut, but still Stuart worked. The hot, stinging liquid climbing his throat, but still Stuart worked. The thick black liquid flowing from his mouth, but still Stuart worked. The lungs in his chest begging for air, but still Stuart worked. The edges of his vision turning to black, but still Stuart worked. The heart in his chest beating its last, and finally Stuart stopped his work. This is where Jeremy re-enters, throwing Stuart's body aside and collecting every single drop of the black bile that spilled forth from Stuart's exhausted and emaciated corpse. The Bos Drwg are demonic Abrahamic entities that subsist upon a substance known as black bile. This liquid is thought to have been one of the 4 humours from medieval medicine and does not exist within man naturally. However, the Bos Drwg appears to warp reality just enough to bring it into existence. While the methods do vary, the goal of the Bos Drwg is to break down a person to near the point of stress-related death, at which point the black bile will be expelled from the victim, killing them. In many cases, the victim perishes from a lack of oxygen, literally choked to death by the anomalous liquid coming from their own body. However, even if they were to survive this, they would still die, as once all the black bile is expelled, the person perishes regardless. In medieval medical terms, their body being too out of alignment to survive. The Bos Drwg appears to require this liquid in order to live, harvesting it meticulously as to not let a single drop go to waste. While they can and do eat and drink human food and liquids, they cannot be sustained by them. This is why each will carry a small vial with them containing the black bile, adding a single drop to whatever they consume. Within a secure location will be the Bos Drwg's main supply of collected black bile. It seems to have an indefinite shelf life, so they can go months or even years between harvests. But focusing on the Bos Drwg themselves, in their natural form, they are a far cry from a human being. Far more monstrous in appearance and rather larger, however, they appear to possess a rather interesting anomalous ability. Similar to the Devil's Bridge legend in the Dealmaker video, the Bos Drwg are able to wear the skin of human beings, though this process is far less light-hearted than in the story. While within their true form, they will hunt down a mundane human, viciously attacking them, then skinning them while they are still alive most of the time. This leaves the Bos Drwg with a human skin too small and the wrong shape for them to fit within, and yet, against all logic, they do, taking on the form of the victim and even their voice changing to match. But this is only the tip of the iceberg that is the Bos Drwg. Over the years, after taking down many of their number, something has become very clear, at least when discussing those within Wales. They all appear to work for something they call the Withered One. Reading through company reports, personal journals, and correspondence between different Bos Drwg, we have started to piece together an odd picture. Each Bos Drwg's main focus appears to be the collection of more of the black bile. However, this withered one seems to have greater goals in mind. We have found evidence of Bos Drwg attempting to hide failures in reports to this enigmatic figure that were directly caused by their own overharvesting of their workforce. Along with this, we have also found that both money and material have been directed all over the world by these entities. However, to what purpose, we do not know. Their greater actions on the world stage seem almost random, from starting an illicit trade in Heavenly Manor to cornering the steel bracket market. It all appears disconnected, however, from correspondence we've captured, is all in aid of this greater goal. But again, the Bos Drwg appear hampered by their own nature, and much of the time seem to work against their greater efforts. One example would be an incident that took place within a PPI call center. For those not in the know, a predatory practice became popular after it was exposed that people were sold payment protection insurance by banks without being informed. These PPI call centers would cold call members of the public and offer to get them a reimbursement for this missold insurance, while taking up to 50% of the payout. Anyway, we received an anonymous tip that a Bos Drwg was operating one of these call centers, and so we conducted a raid. We found that the entity had already fled, but on further examination it was discovered that they were the ones who tipped us off. Apparently, due to their own greed for the black bile, they had fallen far behind where they should have been for the withered one, and so instead of admitting to this, they alerted us to them, so they could inform the withered one that it was because of us that they couldn't complete their task. But how does one go about hunting a Bos Drwg? Well, apprentices aren't going to like this, but they are the perfect bait for this entity. To start, you'll need to find the possible sites where one is operating. These will typically be places with high staff turnover. After you find a location which is constantly hiring new people and yet the overall staff number never seems to increase, you'll want to confirm your suspicions by seeing if those individuals who left went missing or were found in their homes dead, as different Bos Drwg have different methods of disposing of their victims. Once you have a reasonable suspicion, you're going to make your apprentice apply for a job at the location. You'll want to arrange daily check-ins with this apprentice that should be mandatory, as you need to monitor how much time they are actively working at this place. You need to keep a detailed timetable so you can monitor how the situation progresses. What you're waiting for is the first time they do not check in. This will most likely be the night the Bos Drwg makes its move, though it can be a few days after, so approach slowly and quietly not to spook the entity off. Once you see your apprentice begin to spew out the black bile, this is when you move in to disrupt the process, saving your apprentice's life. The Bos Drwg's reality warping abilities take a long time to take effect, and so won't be an issue. However, once their skin suit is damaged, the effect that keeps their monstrous form inside it will be broken, spilling them out. In their natural form, they will be far stronger than yourself, and so you will need to act quickly, pouring damage onto them before they can kill you or escape. We recommend blessed rounds for this purpose. The blessing can be conducted by any high-ranking member of any of the Abrahamic faiths. You could also use eldritch rounds, however, they are far more strictly controlled. As for the apprentice, they will need several months to recover from this experience, as they will be malnourished and completely exhausted. We at the Order recommend giving them a bonus after this experience to manage any hard feelings. The most worrying aspect of the Bos Drwg is how they turn a system we created against us. Modern capitalism, while not perfect by any means, has allowed us to live far longer and more comfortably, at least in the first world, but the Bos Drwg forces us to confront one aspect of this machine that sustains us. In an attempt to harness our own greed and turn it into progress, we have exposed ourselves to evils that we were simply not ready for, and the Bos Drwg delight in taking advantage of this. But that will be all for today. Please like, comment and subscribe with Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom. Thank you.